Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very fantastic information for you today because the Malian Armed Forces just carried out a successful operation in the north of Menaka. The target of this special military operation is a Libyan commander who they call a specialist in controlled demolition, and he's a fighting force. According to the information we received, they said when Soleimani AG Bakawa goes out for operation, he demolished everything in his path, and that is why they gave him the AKA name, Soldier. They call him a soldier because of his reputation on the front line. Ladies and gentlemen, according to what we heard, this man is responsible for kidnapping, beheading, a lot of heinous crime you can think about. But ladies and gentlemen, today marked the end of this scourge in human form. For the past 2 weeks, there have been credible intel that have been fed to the Gatia militias, which is the Tuareg pro-government militias that have been fighting for the sovereignty of Mali. Recently, there was a joint agreement that was signed by majority of the chiefs of this region, the northern Mali, that they want to work effectively with the government to root out this element. So they got intel that Soleimani AG Bakawa was on ground, and they were ready to perform another heinous crime, kidnap some of the northern chiefs. But ladies and gentlemen, what happened was devastating. The information was fed to the necessary authorities, and the intrepid Malian Armed Forces, they moved in. Immediately they moved in, Soleimani AG Bakawa called for backup. This firefight that happened in Menaka from incursion to extraction was about 1 hour 20 minutes. Soleimani AG Bakawa did not go down without making everybody understand that he is a fierce fighting force. Just that today, the story went a different route. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a picture of Soleimani AG Bakawa. Let us now get the official statement of the Malian Armed Forces, shall we?
The General Staff of the Armed Forces informs national and international opinion that a precision operation was successfully conducted in the Tinfidimita area, resulting in the neutralization of Soleimani AG Bakawa, known as Soldier, one of the notorious leaders of the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, EIGS. This individual, particularly feared, was at the head of a group infamous for having sown terror in the city of Menaka and its surroundings. He is directly involved in several kidnappings of civilians as well as in targeted murders against farmer and innocent populations. Through this operation rigorously planned and executed with professionalism, the farmer reaffirmed their unwavering commitment to defend the integrity of the national territory, to protect populations and to eradicate all terrorist threats to our nation. The General Staff of the Armed Forces welcomes the resilience of the Malian people and calls on all citizens to show vigilance, solidarity and confidence in their defense and security forces, which relentlessly continue the struggle for a united, stable and sovereign Mali. United, we will win.
Ladies and gentlemen, Soleimani AG Bakawa was one of the rebel leaders that, in collaboration with the NATO forces back then, worked together to knock out the legendary African leader Muammar Gaddafi. He has been performing this operation for a long time, but ladies and gentlemen, everything that has a beginning has a end. So ladies and gentlemen, according to further credible intelligence that we got, Soleimani AG Bakawa always had this religious belief that he is going to meet his end on the battlefield, and that is why he always goes out there without no mercy on his victim. According to the information we had, he always told his lieutenants that one day he will meet his end on the battlefield. According to what we heard, he said he doesn't believe that a strong man deserves to die at home, that he always told them they need to fight hard because dying on the battlefield is the greatest end a man can have. But ladies and gentlemen, this man has kissed the dust. This was not only a ground operation, but it was supported from the ground and through the birds in the sky. Ladies and gentlemen, we got clips from the birds in the sky and from the ground. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those operations where the Malian Armed Forces showed and they displayed overwhelming military capability. And this is showing how the Malian Armed Forces has evolved over time in this counter-terrorism war. War changed people. But ladies and gentlemen, the Malians have changed into a completely different fighting force. As we have seen, this is not the same farmers that we know going back to 2020 or 2021 or 2019 when France was still there. They are more capable now, they are more effective, they are more intrepid, and they are ever conscious. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. For those that said the Malians are not strong enough, now the proof is in the pudding. You don't have to explain how strong you are. If you can contain a Western-backed FLA, the Azawadian terrorist, if you can combat the EIGS, if you can combat the ISGS, and if you can combat the notorious JNIM terrorist sect, all in one, the AES states are picking them up, they're knocking them off. A lot of people would have been asking questions that why is it that the Malians have not overrun these people if they really have the true capabilities? Let me tell you what the Malians are doing. They are rooting these people out completely. Different when you cut a weed, right? You cut through a weed on the head, it has the tendency to grow back again. Ladies and gentlemen, the Malians are not doing that. The Malians are completely rooting these people out. And in this operation, Bakawa was the highlight to further back up the effectiveness of the Malian Armed Forces. This is not an easy war, because this whole group that we've talked about are being backed by Western powers. Mauritania backs them up, Algeria backs them up. I mean, we can't mention how many proxies these fighters have. Recently, we can see the Algerian president asking to mediate in the Malian issue. But ladies and gentlemen, the Algerian president received no answer. What he received was silence. And the next answer the Malians gave is the results that we have on the line of combat, destroying this element and making them understand that the Malian Armed Forces is not ready and won't be willing to negotiate with any terrorists now or ever. The Malians are noble people, and this is just another proof. Recently, we had over 70 people that were deleted in the span of 3 days by the Malian Armed Forces.
General Staff of the Armed Forces informs the public opinion that as part of the operations to secure the territory and protect people, the FARMA conducted a series of strikes that neutralized many terrorist objectives. During the 15th of July, 2025, the coordination of the air forces of TAES made it possible to neutralize about 40 terrorists in groups in the Andarambakane sector, region of Menaka. On the 17th of July, 2025, a terrorist logistics and training base was destroyed in the Nyano sector, Segao region, with the neutralization of about 30 terrorists. On the 19th of July, 2025, the FARMA destroyed 02 pick-ups carrying armed terrorist fighters that marked the FARMA logistics convoy the movements to Agulhok. This made it possible to cut short the ambitions of the armed terrorist groups. On the same day, a terrorist logistics and training base was destroyed in the Tinaisha area, Timbuktu region. The General Staff of the Armed Forces reassures that the search for and destruction of terrorists continues. United, we will win.
But ladies and gentlemen, this is just another milestone in this demolition cause of the Malian Armed Forces. And from all the information we've gathered in recent time, we can see that some of those fighters are Mauritanians, some of those fighters are Libyans, some of those fighters are Algerians. And you know, all of these guys all together, what has happened? Biting the dust, back to back to back. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see that Mali is not just confronted by some group of bandits or terrorists. You can see that they are confronted by different hostile neighbors from left to right to left. But what happened at the end of the day? Mali continued to stand strong. Ladies and gentlemen, the proof is when you start seeing a country that is ready to fight terrorism, this is what you see.
Dans la région de Nara, c'est au sud-ouest de Madina Kaguru, près du secteur de Bamadougou, que les militaires ont poursuivi leur traque. Entre le 12 et le 13 juillet 2025, plusieurs refuges de transit ont été localisés et détruits. 3 terroristes ont été neutralisés au cours de ces opérations. Les soldats ont également saisi du matériel de surveillance preuve de la sophistication croissante des dispositifs d'observation ennemis. Dans un message adressé à l'opinion nationale, l'état-major général des armées a salué l'efficacité de ces interventions et assuré que les opérations de recherche et de destruction des positions terroristes se poursuivront sans relâche.
So, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the president of Algeria, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, come out on social media to try to pour some cold into the heat that the Malians are bringing into this warfare, steamrolling this element, you will notice that the end is actually drawing near. We keep getting reports every day of the Malians, laying siege, crushing this element, even though they've deployed the sniper rifle, they've deployed drones, they've deployed everything, but we can see that it's not working. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? This is just another victory in the bag. Ladies and gentlemen, we have all come to realize that men lie, women lie, but contextualized numbers don't lie. The Malians are putting the numbers on the board. Let the propaganda continue to go on. We will continue to bring you the untainted, transparent news as much as we can. The billion-dollar question is, who is ready to kiss the dust next? Ladies and gentlemen, we won't deny you this news. Once it happens, we'll bring it right to your doorstep. It's your boy 72 Android signing out, enough said. But before I go,